Hello everyone! Today, I'm going to be showing you some good useful tips and tricks that you can use when creating your Tableau bar charts. What we are going to be basing the foundation of the bar chart on is overall employee satisfaction, which you can see we have created in a calculated field right here. So to start off, we are going to begin setting up this bar chart. First, let's select our calculated field called overall satisfaction and drag it right on up to the column section. One more time, you're going to click your calculated field and drag it right on up to the column section. Next, we need to grab our employee data, which is going to be right here. To repeat the same process we just did, I'm going to click it and drag it right on over to the rows section now. One more time, click and drag it right on over there. Now, as you can see, our bar chart is created. Now, if you're a beginner in Tableau, you're most likely thinking the same thing I did when I made my first bar chart, and that this is a little messy and not very organized. And that is correct. We need to make some improvements to make this look a lot better. So let's start. First, let's select the drop-down arrow next to our overall satisfaction and change it to average instead of sum. Go up here to this green tab next to columns, click the drop-down, go down to where it says measure sum, and click average. There we go. This bar chart is starting to look a lot better, but we still have a good ways to go, so let's keep going. Next, let's change these numbers up to make this bar chart display more accurate information. I'm going to go over to our label tab under marks. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to click show mark labels. And this will now show all of the actual data next to the bars in our chart. However, I prefer this to be in percentages, so I'm going to show you how to change this. We're going to do a similar process of changing the sum of overall satisfaction to the average, but this time we're going to do it in the label tab under marks. First, let's grab overall satisfaction from the Q12 data. Then we're going to drag it up to the label tab and drop it in there. Then repeat the process we recently did. Go to the green tab, click the drop down arrow, go down to where it says measure sum, hover over it, and click average. Now that we have that, we're going to go back to the same green tab, click the drop down area, and instead of going to measure, we're going to go to format. Now that we're in there, we want this data in percentages. So I'm going to go over to the default section in the top left hand corner of my screen and click the numbers drop down. Select the format option you want. I want percentages, so I'm going to click that. And there we go. All the bars are now displaying percentage values. But what about the average overall satisfaction section? Well, that's easy. I'm going to click away, and I'm going to click axis instead of pane. I'm going to go down to the numbers drop down again, click it, and click percentage. Now, there's a lot of extra zeros and extra numbers that don't need to be there, so I'm going to lower this down to 0. However, based on the depth of your data, you can raise this to even 4, or even higher, depending on how in-depth your data is, but I want it at 0. And there we go. This is looking a lot better. However, I want these bars formatted in a specific way. So I'm going to hover over average overall satisfaction and click this format button. And there we go. Now it is formatted from the highest overall satisfaction to the lowest. Next, we can incorporate some added detail. One of these added details that is really beneficial is a company average reference line, and here's how we can do that. First, I'm going to close out of this, and then I'm going to go to the analytics dropdown next to my data, and then I'm going to go down under custom, click on reference line, make sure to grab it, drag it and drop it in the table bit. So one more time, I'm going to grab this reference line and drop it right inside of the table section. And now this menu will open up. Now, in this bar chart, we are really looking at percentages. So that's what we want. So first we're going to go to the value and make sure it is set at overall satisfaction and average. Now that we have that, we can click OK. And there we go. Now the average is showing up. Another great thing that we can add to our bar chart is to see the count of employees for each department. So we're going to go back to our data, top left here, and next we're going to locate employee ID. There it is. We're going to drag it over to the marks section, but instead of label, we're going to drop it in the tooltip section. So once again, we're going to click and drag this employee data and drop it in the tooltip section. Then we can go ahead and right click it, or we can click the drop down arrow and open this up, and then we can go to measure count. We can go to measure and then click count distinct. And then when we hover over each of these bars, we can see the population count of each of the employee in each of the jobs. So for example, in executive office, there was only one, and they had 100%. So now you can see that the data is skewed by a certain amount of employees in each section. Another example of this, in the production department, there is a number of 284 employees, so we're getting a lot more in-depth data there. I really want to thank all of you for watching. These are great tips for crafting up your bar charts in Tableau, and I urge all of the viewers out there to take these into account when crafting your charts. Feel free to reach out in the comments if you have any questions concerning Tableau. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.